Hey everyone, and welcome to a special Halloween episode of Ecto. I am going to have my haunted house here in the background if you can hear it. Be quiet for a second so you can hear all the banging and just fun stuff that's going on here. It's amazing, isn't it? Okay, the story that I'm about to tell you may be true, may not be true. You're going to have to decide. Okay, this story begins 60 years ago with a little girl named Natalie. She was out trick-or-treating. She didn't have very many friends. People were mean to Natalie. Just not nice at all. Not nice at all. She went out and she trick-or-treated, kind of followed the crowd. And she went house to house and her bucket was almost full when these mean boys came and snatched it right from her hands. And she sat and cried and cried and cried. All she wanted was her treats. That's all she wanted. Suddenly, from the woods, an old lady appears. She said to her, "What's the matter, child?" Natalie said, "They took all my treats. I don't have any. I can't go back. It's too late." "I have treats for you," said the old lady. Natalie, of course, was reluctant, but went with her anyways, because back then, you kind of trusted people, So, she's walking with this woman, and one of the little boys who stole her candy sees her walking with her. And even though he kept the treats, he still felt kind of bad, so he followed along. He followed behind them. He was very curious as to where she was going with this woman. And he could hear their conversation. The old woman, "It's okay, child. I have a place for you, and I have so many treats. You won't know what to do with them." Natalie says, "Oh, that would be so great. Thank you so much. All I really want is treats." The little boy, of course, knows something's wrong. This does not sit right with him. So he keeps following. He follows him through the woods, up a path, nice pebbled path, and they get to this house. It's actually a cute little cottage right in the middle of the woods. I don't remember seeing this before, he says to himself. So he goes forward, and he's watching as the old lady leads the little girl Natalie into her house. "This way, child, you'll just love it. You'll love it." So the little boy yells out and says, "No, don't do it. There's something wrong." Natalie looks back, and as she does, the door closes and the house disappears. The little boy starts yelling and he runs back to town. And he's running and running and running and running. He doesn't appear to be getting anywhere. All he is in the woods. So he's screaming and screaming for anybody to help him and to help the little girl. Nothing happens. He's just running and running, and he sits down and he cries. And suddenly he's awoken by a man with a rifle. So of course it scares him, right? So he's like, "What is going on here?" Man says, "Son, what are you doing?" He says, "You're here crying. What happened? What's going on?" So he proceeds to tell him about this little girl and about this witch. And the man says, "Wait a minute. What did you say? What was her name?" He says, "Her name's Natalie. I know her from school." He says, "Wait a minute, son. What's your name?" "My name's Tommy. Why? What's going on?" The man proceeds to tell him how Natalie and him have been missing for over 3 weeks. Boy says, "That's not possible. I just started running. I just seen them just now. It was Halloween. It is Halloween." And says, "Son, no, it's not. It's not even close." He says, "It's almost Thanksgiving." The little boy sits down, just looking around, stunned. So he's thinking, well, maybe if I made this, maybe. So he starts running off into the woods. The man follows him. So he's like, son, where are you going? He says, we gotta find the cottage. We gotta find the cottage. She's there. She's there. So, of course, there's no cottage. Nobody can see anything. So by this time, the man gets the kid and they go into town. Of course, everybody's freaking out. And Natalie's parents are there going, where is she? Where is she? What did you do to her? What did you do? And he's like, I didn't do anything. I didn't do it. I didn't do anything to her. What do you mean? His friends had told the police how they had stole her candy that night and how he took off to follow her. And now they both have disappeared and he shows up. They want to know what he did to her. They think he did something. So he's freaking out. He's telling everybody what happened, And of course, again, nobody believes him. They make him take a lie detector test, which he passed. They don't know what to think. So he and his parents move away. And he never forgot it. Tommy never forgot what was going on. And it was a legend in this town. So when Tommy grew up, he's about 25 years old, he goes back to that town. And it was just before Halloween. And he was looking, and he just couldn't believe, what had happened that night. And he's confused, and he went into the woods with a flashlight, still saw nothing. He's so confused. So he goes to visit one of his friends, and they talk about that night, what happened. And his friend doesn't even believe him. He said, Tommy, what did you do to her? He said, I didn't do anything. He says, I'm telling you, this weird lady came out of the woods, this creepy lady with this weird voice came out of the woods, and she took her to this cottage that disappeared. He said, and I was only running for just a few minutes. I swear to you, I ran, but it wasn't 3 weeks. He said, I don't know what happened, I don't know what's going on. He said, this is so weird, man. He says, I've looked up dimensional portals, I've looked up aliens, I've looked up everything that I can think of. I don't know what this is. Suddenly, this elderly woman comes down the stairs. And she tells him, you know what it is? It's the veil. He's looking at her, he says, what do you mean the veil? She said, it's the veil that lives on Halloween. You have to wait for Halloween and you'll be able to find it. Of course, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So he and his friend are sitting there, and they, of course, they're adults now, so they're drinking. Trick-or-treaters come to the door, and they're handing out candy, whatnot, And he starts thinking about what she said. Maybe it's true. So he and his friend take off. They're like, we're out of here. We're going into these woods. We're going to find out what is going on. So they take off with the flashlights. They see nothing. Nothing. So they go back and they sit on the curb in front of his house, and they see a small child with a huge bucket of candy. And they see these preteens, probably about 11 or 12 years old, come from around the corner and they steal the kid's candy. And he's remembering what happened. So he's sitting there and he's watching the kid, and he sees the woman. He sees the old lady. She comes out of the forest, and she's talking to the, hi, child. Don't be sad. I have treats for you. I have treats for you. So the little boy, of course reluctant, because this is a new day and age. They're like, stranger danger. He's like, no, I better not. And he starts yelling for his mom and dad. Well, the woman disappears into the forest. Him and his friend both just take off. Got bat out of hell. They are running into the forest after this person. And they can hear her, but they can't see her. All they hear is, you got my treats, I got your treats. And they're like, of course, creeped out by this. So they're following her. And finally they get to this cottage. And they're like, he says, that's it, man, that's the cottage right there. There's it. So they didn't even hesitate. They both go bust into this cottage, and they're expecting to see either the old lady or children or something. They don't see anything. All they see is a whole bunch of different, like, cakes and cookies on the counter, and they see a fire going, they see, different things like that, and couldn't believe what's going on. And so he starts screaming for Natalie, 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 Natalie. Nothing. He's going through the house. They're looking everywhere. They go back outside. Natalie, Natalie. They can't find her. So suddenly, this lady comes from around the tree. It's the old lady. She's like, I know what you want. I said, yes, we want Natalie. Where is she? No. You want the treats. So they're freaking out, right? They are just freaking out. And they're like, no, we want to know where Natalie is. So he goes to grab her. And when he does, he hears, don't touch me! And looks up, and there's a teenager before him. And he's looking, he puts his hand up in the air, and he's like, but you were, you... And she's like, that's right. She goes, I'm Natalie. I'm the one that went into the woods with that old lady, and now I become her. And she is mad as hell. I mean, she is pissed off at him because she knows they're the reason she is there. I said, what do you mean? She said, because every Halloween now I have to become her, just like she was before. And she got released when she took me. Now I have to take somebody, and you took the only person that I wanted to have so I could get out of this mess. Like, what are you talking about? How can you be this age? You should be my age. She's all, not in that dimension, you dumbass. And she's screaming at him, right? So she sits down with him with the treats, and she's explaining to them basically that the old lady that came was a young person that was stolen by the old lady before her. Kind of like a Santa Claus thing. You know the movie Santa Claus? Kind of the same way. One had to become her for the other one to be released. So she's like, I have to go. This is the only way I can do this. So she goes to take off out of the house, and all of a sudden she turns again. Her face turns old, her voice goes, she's like, I got to go get my treats. She takes off, and they're trying to chase her. They're trying to go after her. Well, suddenly the cottage disappears. The woods go bad. They can't get anywhere. They're stuck, just like he was before. So they're running together. They're freaking out. At least this time he had company, So they both decide to sit down. And suddenly, out of the woods, they see a flashlight. As it gets closer, it's a police officer. He goes to look at his friend. He says, oh man, it's a cop. He looks over, his friend's gone. What the hell, right? So he tells the officer, he's like, my friend just disappeared, and Natalie, and da-da-da-da. And this cop goes, you're the person we're looking for. You need to come with us. He grabs him up, takes him out of the woods. He says, do you know what day it is? He says, it's Halloween. He says, no, it's not Halloween. He says, it's 4 days after Thanksgiving. The guy's looking at him. He says, what? What do you mean for? No, it was just Halloween. My friend was here. He was here. He's like, no. No, his parents put out a missing reports out on him. This is the second time this happened. He said, you need to tell us what's going on. So suddenly all these people come into the police station, and everybody's freaking out. And they're looking at him, and they're looking around. They're looking at him again, and they're whispers. And he's like, what's going on? He's like, don't you go anywhere, the cop tells him. So he goes out. And he comes back in. He says, can you please explain to me how the girl that you were with so many years ago, Natalie, that disappeared, just showed up here, but she's not your age and she's a teenager? The guy's like, well, maybe it's her kid or something. He's like, no. The cop's like, no, this is her. Her parents identified her. And The kid's like, is she alive? He's like, yes, she's alive. Do you have a reason to believe she wouldn't be, son? So this guy's like confused. He's like just freaking out. He is going insane. So he goes to try to talk to her. Nobody's letting him near her. She's not speaking to him at all. All she keeps saying is, it's your fault, and pointing at him. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. I had to do it. It's your fault. So everybody's just freaking out. So this guy's shaken by this time. He is just shaken beyond belief. So they actually released him because they had no proof of anything. They don't know what's going on. All they know is Natalie keeps saying it's his fault. She shows up younger. People are freaking out. They think they're like in the episode of a Twilight Zone, right? So fast forward 20 years to the year 2018. The man sitting in his house earlier today, the kid who originally stole the candy, and he's wondering what happened to his friend. And he's just got his head down in just disbelief. And he's just so sorry of all the things that transpired with Natalie, his friend. And he took a drive today back to the town he lived in. And he just drove around, and the way I hear, he was just arrested. And sadly, they found his friend too, with his throat slit. And all they found on his phone was he videotaped. They could see his friend, but his friend was probably only in his 30s, from the looks of it. And he comes up to him, he's like, I've got treats for you. And the guy killed him. He killed his friend. And he was arrested today. And they're trying to get him on charges of murder. And all this because he stole candy. And he got the treats because the candy and he caused it all. So there's a life lesson for you children. Don't steal candy.
Trying to find a little piece of heaven.
Okay, and welcome back to Ecto. Sorry, that first story was a little cheesy, but I thought you guys would like it. At least anything you can scare the kitties with it. Speaking of kitties, there's a rumor floating around that black-eyed children have made a comeback and that they're going around, but this time the stories are a little different, that they're warning people, which is really bizarre. Here's a story that I read, and I'm going to try to shorten it a little bit because it's pretty long, but basically there is a guy over in Pittsburgh, in a suburb of Pittsburgh, who claims to have seen this black-eyed child in the back seat of his car. He was driving along, he looked in the rearview mirror, saw nothing. Within a few minutes he looked again and he sees this little blonde-haired child with black eyes sitting in his back seat. He pulls over, he goes to look, and there's nothing there. He looks in front of him and there's a black-eyed child standing in front of his car. So he goes to get out to talk to the child. The child's not speaking, just staring at him. So, of course, creeped out, he gets in his car and he gets on the phone, tries to call the police. The police, 911, is not answering. It's just ring, 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 ring. Suddenly he looks up and there's 3 of them. There's 3 children with blonde hair and black eyes standing in front of his car. So, of course, he's thinking this is something demonic. He's freaking out. He's doing everything in his power. He's praying. He's doing whatever he has to. And they're still there. Suddenly, they all 3 point to the sky. So the man gets out of his car and he looks up and he sees this thing coming at him. And he goes and he ducks into this ditch because he don't know what the hell's going on. And it's a small airplane that had lost control and was trying to make an emergency landing on the highway, but instead landed on these cars and caused a great big pileup. Probably about 3 or 4 miles down the road is where it landed, which is where he would have been if he hadn't seen this child. So he's claiming that they warned him, and that's what saved his life. And then there's another lady here. Let's see, where's this lady from? Hold on. This lady's from Oregon, and she claimed that she was going to pick her daughter up from school, and she looked in the rearview mirror to look back, and same thing, she's seen a black-eyed child sitting in the back seat of her car. So she slams on the brakes, she looks back, there's nothing there. And so she can't believe it. She's having an anxiety attack, thinking she's seeing things, seeing a ghost, she don't know what. Same thing, starts grabbing the rosary, grabbing anything she can, starts praying and doing all these things. So she gets about a half a mile down the road and she sees a child sitting on the side of the road by themselves. Well, being a mother and seeing what she just saw, she pulls over and goes up to the child. The child looks up, it's got blonde hair and black eyes, staring at this woman, and it's pointing across the street. So she looks over to where the child is pointing, and all of a sudden she sees this big ball of fire. Huge ball of fire. The child disappears. The lady runs back to her car and she's freaking out. She can actually feel the heat from this explosion. So she's calling 911 and everything else, and it was this factory that was between her and where her child was at school. Well, they figured out the children at the school were fine. But if she hadn't seen the black-eyed child, she would have been right near the explosion, probably would have died. So that's the next sighting of the black-eyed child. Then we have another one. This one's kind of a little unnerving to me. It's just kind of like made my heart pitter-patter. This is quite recently during Hurricane Michael. This person claims that as the hurricane was approaching, these people decided to stay. And out in the middle of the hurricane, they see these 2 children standing in their yard, blonde hair with black eyes. Except they're not moving, their hair's not moving, nothing. They're just standing there staring at them. So the lady says she grabs her stuff and she tries to go out, but she can't. She can't get to them. The winds are too strong, everything's too strong. and the children point down towards the river. They both did at the exact same time. And as she looks, she sees the river coming, basically just coming at them. So she goes inside and she gets her husband, and they go up the side of the hill by their house, like way up high, and they're sitting there watching the house that they were just in get washed away. And the black-eyed children disappeared. So she swears on everything that these children saved her life. Now, this, granted, this is in this website here, so, like I said, take it with a grain of salt. Who knows if it's actually real or not, so, but I guess we'll find out. Oh, wait, here's another one, Okay, this one here was, this one's over by you, like Denver, Colorado. This woman claimed that during a thunderstorm, she looked out into her yard and she seen a child with blonde hair and black eyes standing in the yard. And she first opened up the door and said, "Sweetie, what, can I help you? What's wrong with you?" The child didn't say anything. And then she noticed the child wasn't wet. It was raining and the child was not wet at all, not even getting wet. The rain was not touched, almost like it was projected. So she goes back in her house and she calls the police and says she thinks somebody's messing with her, messing with a projector or something. And all of a sudden she said she looked out and she sees 2 children out there, and she dropped her phone. And the children were pointing at the roof of her house. Were just pointing straight up. So the lady couldn't figure out what was going on. So instead of going out the back door where they were, she came out the front door to look at the roof of the house. She goes out there and noticed that her roof was on fire. I know you think of the song, the roof. Never. But yeah, the roof of her house is on fire, and she didn't even realize it. Apparently her house had been struck by lightning at some point in time, and she didn't even realize it. She said that she remembers hearing a very large clap of thunder. She thought a tree or something got hit. She had no idea her house got hit. Her lights didn't even go out. So, the fire department comes and everything, and they were able to save most of her house. There was a huge hole in the roof and everything, but these children warned her that her roof was on fire, and she had no idea that her roof had been hit by lightning. So, there's some little unnerving things to think about while you're out trick-or-treating tonight with your children. Everybody be very careful tonight. Don't forget to wear reflective gear. Make sure, you keep an eye on your kids, because all these kids in these costumes, you don't even know who's who, so just keep an eye out for them. But anyways, this has been another episode of Ecto. You guys enjoy your night. Don't get too creeped out, or even if you do, so what? Have fun. And I hope you liked my little haunted house tonight. So, isn't it great? I love it. So you all have fun, and hope you enjoyed this extra special episode. So, and look out for those black-eyed children. You never know. And also look out for the creepy lady that wants the treats. She wants her treats. So yeah, be very careful of her. Anyways, you all have a great night. Have fun.